Welcome to the Mexpreneurs Podcast, the podcast about the stories of Mexican tech startup founders who are building world-class, fast-growing companies and having a positive impact at a large scale. My name is Sergio Chavez. I'm a Mexican based in Germany, a tech startup founder, executive, and mentor, and your host. Today we welcome back Pedro Luraschi together with his co-founder, Javier Luraschi. They are the founders of Hal9, a generative AI startup based in Seattle, USA. Hal9 is transforming the way businesses interact with artificial intelligence by enabling companies to create AI coworkers and virtual assistants that can automate tasks, analyze data, and provide insights in real time, all without the need of advanced technical expertise. Since its inception, Hal9 has rapidly expanded its client base across multiple industries, including technology, healthcare, and finance, with a strong presence in both the USA and Latin America. Javier is CEO and Pedro is Chief Operations Officer. Javier is responsible for the overall strategic vision of Hal9. He leads the company's direction in product, go-to-market, and fundraising. Javier is a seasoned software and data engineer. Before Hal9, he worked at SAP, Microsoft Research and RStudio, now Posit, where he developed expertise in data engineering, cloud computing, and building scalable AI solutions. Pedro leads the operations at Hal9, overseeing product and business development, as well as the Hal9 consulting and professional services. You can learn more about Pedro and his professional journey through the previous podcast episode. I hope you enjoy. Support for this episode comes from Skyflare, a cybersecurity company with a mission to make e-commerce safe for online shops and which currently protects dozens of Shopify-based businesses through its 360 degrees holistic protection. As an online shop owner, you know that every cent you spend in online advertisement counts, especially in Google AdWords. Therefore, keeping a tight control of your budget and the ROI are essential. Nevertheless, there are bad actors out there who can make those costs explode. Skyflare's Click Fraud Protection solution helps you prevent and resolve those threats. At Mexpreneurs, we had the privilege to have Skyflare's founders in the podcast, including Juan Ocampo, a Mexican tech startup founder, and Skyflare's Chief Operations Officer. Visit skyflare.com/Mexpreneurs to learn more and also to get a 10% discount during your first 3 months of your annual subscription. Skyflare is at the moment available in Europe, Mexico, and Canada through the Shopify App Store. Hello, Javier. Pedro, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sergio.
Hi, Sergio. Thanks for having us.
And thank you guys for joining. So, Javier, please tell us, what is Hal9?
For sure. Hal9 is a platform to help you build chatbots. And you can think about as your private version of ChatGPT. You can customize it, mostly focused for building productivity chatbots. We like to call these chatbots coworkers because it's not really for entertainment purposes, but rather to help you be more productive at work, to make your team more productive, to help you manage customers. But yeah, I mean, it's the fastest way of building a chatbot that is custom. It can be pretty powerful compared to some other solutions out there. Ours is the only one that allows you to customize it with Python code. So you can go from a very simple chatbot built in literally a couple minutes to a very, very complex one where your entire data team gets involved and connects to your CRM, sends notifications, it's integrated to Slack and the like.
What exactly is that problem that you guys identified and would lead you to create Hal9? Because right now I think the AI space is like the Wild West. There's so many different tools out there. There's people playing around with different tools, creating chatbots. But what is that big problem that you guys identified and said, like, okay, we need to do something about it?
Probably here, Pedro, you should also add your thoughts, but I'll start. And I would say that right now, building chatbots in the enterprise is really, really hard. It's similar to what happened with machine learning or data science like 10 years ago, where executives knew that you had to build, machine learning solutions, but the skills were missing and you didn't have the platform. That's kind of like the immediate problem that we solve is like, hey, let's just help you be more productive and get the chatbot up and running at work. But I think there's a more transcendental question there, Pedro. Maybe you can answer it, right? Why do we need the chatbots in the first place and whether generative AI is going to deliver on the productivity gains that we all hope for? Pedro, you want to add something?
I would like to mention maybe two sides of this. One is more practical and is that we see a future where LLMs will become a commodity. Right now, there are a couple of actors that are leading that way, and it's kind of obvious which model you want to use, but we're seeing that trend of first a lot of models being trained and also cost being reduced with each new version of the LLM. So we see a future maybe in a couple of years even where choosing an LLM will be as trivial as choosing your cloud provider, where quality is more or less equal from any provider. And it has to do more with where are you storing your data or which option is more practical for your particular company. So if we assume that scenario, you will need another layer of, okay, I have the LLM, but I need everything else to port the actual application that I want from the AI. So that solution is provided by Hal9. And if you want to change the LLM, you can just change the LLM and keep everything else in the same place. That's one side of it. The other side of it, and that's the transcendental question that Javier was mentioning, is that we want to make this new technology. And when I say this new technology, it's also funny because we've been having AI applications for years, but right now with ChatGPT, it seems like we are seeing a new explosion of what AI means. But it really is a new technology in the sense that no one really is an expert on it. And we are seeing a lot of potential applications being open. So we really want to make that technology as available as possible. So we see our platform as enabling, not only an enabling technology in the sense of it's going to be cheaper and faster to deploy a solution using Hal9, but also we're trying to reach out to people that might not have the budget or might not have the skills to do it from scratch, because the really big companies already are working on this. They have their own tooling and their own teams building their own models, maybe even. But we are trying to reach out to smaller companies, and our dream would be to reach even SMBs or even students or people that are working on other fields, no? Not even engineers or data scientists. Maybe they're like lawyers or pedagogues or people entirely other fields that could use to improve their work and their life.
Something that I can add there, and here back to Javier, is that I really like the analogy of thinking of ChatGPT and generative AI as the internet, right? And web pages. Kind of like when web pages started back in year 2000, it was pretty obvious that the internet was going to be revolutionary and something that companies had to adopt, but it wasn't super clear yet what was the use case, right? Like if you think of a company like Walmart, just to pick someone, it might have not been clear at the time. If you put on your web page promo codes, if you put your store locations, location hours, if you sell your products, the correct answer was all of them, right? Like everything end up in the web page. But, today, like when you're building chatbots and generative AI solutions, you want to prioritize. Perhaps the first step is just putting your business hours in your webpage for people to still come to your store, right? Your physical location. But I do think that this investment and area of opportunity is going to take a few years to really evolve and to kind of like transition companies to build a lot of their backbone to be AI driven and AI powered. As Pedro was saying, there's like a more transcendental answer that is still everyone doesn't really know yet, and is something that everyone is exploring exactly where this technology fits best on your business.
And also when you refer to chatbots, because I think a lot of people associate chatbots with customer service. You go into a website and you type something and you get an automatic response. I would greatly appreciate if you can walk with what exactly is the definition that you have on chatbots? Because my understanding is chatbots is much more than that. So how do you see these actually powering a company? Like even what the company of the future is going to look like? Are there going to be the need of multiple people, or are chatbots going to replace the work that is currently being done by many different individuals? Like the setup of a company is going to look like in the future with the adoption of chatbots? Like how do you see that evolving?
We end up using the word chatbots out of practicality. I don't think we are entirely sold on still using that term. It's very easy to talk to someone and explain we build chatbots. And I think everyone has an idea of what a chatbot is. It's a chat where you're talking to a machine instead of a human, no? Like everyone kind of understand that. But you are right on point in the sense that chatbots used to be very dumb, used to be like hard-coded into a very specific set of questions or a conversation path. And if you deviated from that path, the experience was completely broken, no? Like you would get really bad questions, or maybe a hard-coded question that said I cannot reply to that question, and that was it. You're right in the sense that now what you can do with a chat, the things that we are building with Hal9 are very far away from that. We can connect to databases and make the AI write code that will be run in that moment to serve a question. So we can serve, for example, custom dashboards, like reading right on the spot, or SQL queries, or even websites that you can ask the chatbot to ask something, and we will reply with a completely new website that's HTML, CSS, JavaScript code being generated by the AI. So in that sense, you're completely right, but we haven't been able to come up with a language for that. We've tried agents, AI coworkers, and we're kind of exploring other terms, but it's also very, very weird to try to come up with a term that also falls short, no? Because it's not entirely true that we can, with the term coworker, for example, the expectation from someone, if I tell you this is your coworker, the level and the bar is so high because you're going to ask like, please do X and Y. And obviously the AI is not at that point where it will automatically do the work of a community manager or a sales rep or an engineer. And there are some companies promising that, mostly on the code generation side. They promise like, this is your new software engineer and just ask it for a feature or this website. And some use cases do work, but we believe that also the bar is the expectation from people that are not actively working with the AI. It's always a disappointment. So the chatbot is kind of the opposite because the bar is so low and it's like, oh, this is amazing. I can ask it for so much else. I think it has worked for us to talk about chatbots, but you're completely right that we can do so much more right now. And that's part of the exciting thing of our platform.
To add on that, if we go back to the analogy of looking at the beginning of the internet, I don't know if you remember, Sergio, when I was a kid, there used to be this thing called a teleprompter where you would connect to your TV and you could have like super basic, you would go to channels and it was basically like a super basic chat interface. So at the very beginning, the internet was also text-based, right? Like you get text in, text out, and it was pretty, it was interesting, but it was very limited. I do think that in the future, and that's what we're trying to call these, not chatbots, but coworkers or AI coworkers, is you should expect to have your chatbot, for instance, in Slack, which is something that our product currently supports. But that's just like stage 2, perhaps. We're missing stage 3, 4, and 5, where, maybe you should expect in the not so distant future to have your coworker connect to a Zoom meeting, right? The same way that Otter AI and Note AI connect. Maybe you want to customize someone that is an expert on revenue, and maybe it has a face, maybe not, response over voice. Again, the beginning right now, chatbot, as Pedro was saying, is like a very limiting use case, but at least we can fulfill the promise. You know what to expect. And then over time, like the concept will have to transform to support more complex use cases. But yeah, we're just at the beginning. So whatever it's missing, it's super exciting. And there's definitely a ton of work and interesting use cases that are going to evolve over time.
You guys mentioned about empowering the small and medium businesses, and I would assume that a lot of those companies that you're talking to, you're probably talking to the owner, which is probably not a technical person, but more of a business person. So do you see that there's a bigger opportunity with, let's say, business people that may not have such a strong technical background for them to leverage the capabilities of generative AI? Or do you see this equally interesting for technical people? Like, where do you see the greatest opportunity of the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, maybe my take is that our own team has experienced this bias that very technical people, we always react to Gen AI with this mindset of, oh, the AI won't be at my level. The things that we are doing are super complex, and maybe there's some use cases for the AI to help me develop some small features or to automate some workflows. But this thing is super hard to make. And they do have a point. I'm not saying that AI is at the level of an expert, but when you take the point of view of a business user that is just trying to make, like, for example, us, we use image generation a lot just to illustrate our slides or to make thumbnails of our chatbots or videos for YouTube. And we don't need like a lot of work for those assets. We just need an image that is better than the image that we are doing on Paint or whatever we're using as non-graphical experts or designers or illustrators. So there are a lot of use cases from the business user that are ready for using AI. And the part that I really like is that we are not on that mindset of substituting people. It's more about allowing a person to be kind of more productive and more creative by giving them the skills that they won't be able to learn in this lifetime, maybe. Even if you have the will to learn, I don't know, like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, like the investment in terms of hours for someone like me or Javier that our interest is elsewhere, it doesn't make sense to learn a lot of different skills. And in the end, it's also not like super high stakes what we're doing, no? So AI is a perfect use case for that scenario. But you're right, like when you talk to business users, usually they already have some ideas. And if the company is not that big, you're right that there's a sense of problem with budget, but also bigger companies already have a lot of procedures. Like maybe they already centralize their data science team or their R&D team. And also it's harder for those employees to be innovative and to propose new projects that use Gen AI. Like there's already a path written from the corporate level or the highest levels in leadership. And it's harder for those employees to come up with an idea of, let's use Gen AI or this chatbot to solve this problem. I think there's a sweet spot of medium-sized companies or smaller companies with enough budget to bet on this because they are like more flexible and they can take a little bit more of risk, not in the sense that it's going to be critical to the company, but risk in the sense that internally the organization can say like, oh, let's try this. And if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't work, it's not a big deal, no?
But let's say in terms of productivity gains, I think there's a lot to be achieved there. But as you mentioned, there's probably a lot of business individuals that don't know where to start and need help to make that happen. So that's incredible. Of course, you've been working on this already several months. So please walk us briefly in terms of traction. So what is some of the feedback of the customers that you're serving? What are some of the key milestones that you guys have achieved so far?
This is related to the previous answer that Pedro was mentioning, right? About do we focus on the small business or do we focus on the medium business? And since we started the company, Pedro and I had the passion of empowering individuals, small businesses. If you go to hal9.com, you have like a free tier of our platform. And we have over 10,000 users that have come and create simple chatbots or use them, right? Many of them just come to the website, use them, register. And it's just like very light use cases where you're really trying to understand what is the potential. You're using Hal9 perhaps as a replacement to ChatGPT or to generate images. And yeah, we're very proud of that just because it's part of the mission of the company, just empowering individuals that don't have the resources to spend literally millions of dollars building custom chatbots. On the other hand, we have a handful of enterprise customers. That's kind of like the other part of the milestones and traction that we have, where we have companies that are well-recognized global brands that have actually worked with us to build the custom chatbot within their organization. And to be honest, those are the ones that are paying the bills just because they have like a particular need to solve. They look at something like ChatGPT, and they want to use it first with their private data, because by default, when you use ChatGPT, you're giving them access and rights to your data, so they want to prevent that. But more importantly, they also want to connect to their data sources. ChatGPT doesn't know anything about your revenue, your customers, your procurement processes, your legal documents, contracts, employees. So if you ask a question internally in the organization, it's like, who are our top 10 recent hires in Latin America? ChatGPT or Gemini don't know anything about that. So yeah, that customization process, it's pretty important for enterprise customers. And we have a handful of them. Usually the process there looks like enterprise sales. And, like we have a sales process that we help them go through. We onboard them. We handhold them throughout the process until they're successful. So it takes more time, right? Like I wish we had thousands of those customers, but it really takes longer than just going to our website and literally clicking login, create chatbot and play with it. I think we're going well in that sense. And longer term, we want those two audiences to converge. We want people first to come to Hal9, play with it, build something silly, just something for fun, and then realize and have that aha moment. Wait a second, I can use this at work, and then hopefully transition also and ask their manager or their team is like, hey, I've been playing with Hal9. I think we could use this for an internal productivity use case, right? So yeah, that's starting to happen. Right now, we have two different traction paths, and hopefully over the next few months, those two things will start to converge.
And these customers that you're currently serving, are they primarily in the US, or do you also have users now in different geographies?
Yeah, we have users in different geographies. We try to target mostly the US, mostly because Pedro and I are based in the US. But yeah, we have, even if they're not in the US, they're global brands. So it almost doesn't matter where they are located because they're global brands that operate in at least more than one country. So yeah, we're mostly targeting the US market. Definitely, if there's other people interested in working with us, they can use the product anywhere. And large language models happen to be really good at speaking different languages. So we actually have one customer that operates some of their operations on Latin America, and they like to have the answers in Spanish. And large language models happen to be exceptionally good at, hey, make sure that you provide all the answers in Spanish or French, German, whatever you want. That works really, really well. But yeah, for the most part, our global brands are brands in the US.
And I think that's also something that will inevitably happen, meaning in terms of that global reach and that customization to different languages. But still, with the US, I can imagine that you already have a big opportunity ahead of you, and it makes a lot of sense to focus that to begin with. We will be right back for a conversation with our guest. Support for this episode comes from Partnership Leaders, the leading community of partnership professionals and executives in SaaS and tech with over 1,500 members globally. We're living the decade of the ecosystem, and every CEO needs to become a partnership leader. Just take a look at the top companies in the world today like Microsoft, Google, and Apple. They have all become platform companies, and partnership executives in IT have been the ones leading these transformations. Partnership Leaders brings these executives together and is building a playbook to enable CEOs and business leaders across industries to transform their organizations into platform companies. If you're a tech startup founder, Partnership Leaders is the place for you to learn how to leverage partnerships to take your business to the next level. I'm a member of PL and co-host of the Germany chapter and have seen firsthand the richness and value of this incredible community. Visit partnershipleaders.com to learn more and to apply to become a member. Make sure to mention in your application that Mexpreneurs referred you so you can receive a special price if your application is accepted. Now, in terms of the team setup, I have the pleasure to talk to both of you. So please walk us briefly through the origin story. Of course, you both are siblings, but it would be great to learn how exactly the Hal9 and this idea became a reality. And also, who are some of the other people behind Hal9?
Do you want to explain the history, Pedro? I can just go through the team after.
Yeah, sure. You know the story better because actually the first version of Hal9 was started by Javier in 2020, no? Javier, right when the pandemic...
2021, right, Pedro? 2021, yeah.
Well, we incorporated in 2021. You were kind of thinking about the first version of Hal9 a little bit earlier. But yeah, I think I mentioned this on the other episode, Sergio, that my first role at the company was as an advisor, like just helping Javier exploring the space and setting up the team and the company, etc. Yeah, actually, we started with a different idea. We pivoted from that product because we were serving data scientists with a very dev tool product. It was a very technical and it was basically a dev tool for data scientists. And before ChatGPT was launched and after we joined the incubator at the Allen Institute for AI, we pivoted to this version of, okay, let's use generative AI and let's use the LLMs to build more complex things than just a conversation. And the first approach, since we were coming from that data science space, and also Javier has a really strong background on data engineering and data science, the first applications that we were exploring were basically data analytics. And we were using the LLMs to generate code that analyze data and build dashboards. So that was the actual first launch that we did from the platform. During that transition, Javier and I, we've always been remote. I moved last year, 2 years into working into the company. But the company was born remote and we've always had people in different locations. We more or less are a company of 10 people. We kind of remained that size since year one with people in Mexico. For example, we have a team there that works on engineering and data science. Also here in the US, obviously, we have a couple of people. We have people in Canada and also in Europe, actually in Germany. We've always had that mindset of being remote. And I don't think it was caused by the pandemic. I think Javier and I always had that mindset, even before the pandemic with my companies in Mexico and the way Javier worked in our studio, now Posit. It was completely remote. And I think it was kind of obvious to us that the company had that mindset of, we don't really need an office and have a schedule and have people coming in every day. I don't know, Javier, if you want to talk more about it.
I think you covered everything. Yeah, Pedro and I are the two co-founders and are based in Seattle, and the rest of the company is pretty much distributed. I think we've learned, honestly, that time zones are painful. So to be honest, a good chunk of our team, I would say that 80-90% of that team is now basically on America's time zone, right? Because it's not a big issue if someone is like 3 hours ahead or behind. But when someone is like 12 hours, we've learned that it gets tricky. So maybe we'll get better at that. But for now, yeah, our company is mostly distributed. And I think I very much enjoy it. And everyone in the company likes the freedom of just being able to work from wherever and flexibility with the hours. And yeah, I think Pedro also mentioned that our company has really been iterating on, the product, right? And mostly from feedback, I think the transition from doing data analytics to a more generic chatbot platform came from looking at the actual feedback from the users. They basically told us, oh my God, when you're building data analytics, right? If you're using an LLM, you get like a chart, or, you can get different dashboards that you could build. But then users ask, hey, can you interpret the chart, right? Can you tell us what's going on, right? Can you give us feedback on what does it mean to have our revenue go down? So like it was really hard to put on a box. The only thing that this chatbot is good at is building dashboards or analyzing data, because business users don't work that way. They want, and they have examples with something like ChatGPT where they're less constrained. So that's the latest focus that we had this year on making our platform more generic, mostly reacting to customer feedback, user feedback that, is their expectation. And I think it's a fair expectation to not just constrain something to something that is not constrained by itself. Yeah.
And what I'm also super curious is, how exactly do you guys use chatbots yourselves? Does each one of you have your own set of chatbots for the work that you do? Or how do you guys leverage inside this startup?
Well, actually, funny story. I don't know, Pedro, if you remember when we created Ted Lasso. I think it might have been 2021. So it was
super early.
Yeah. So actually
even before the product was focused on chatbots.
Yeah. So like the first thing that we created inside the company was a bot that connects to Slack called Ted Lasso. And, obviously we cannot make it public because we don't have the rights of Ted Lasso. And, that's an HBO show, which I would recommend. Is really good. Apple show, sorry. So the purpose of this chatbot is basically to, we got rid of the daily stand-up meetings. So what this chatbot does is it connects to Clockify, and every day at 6 a.m. in the morning, it basically tells us what everyone did, right? And it just has a very positive attitude. You can say something like, hey, Ted Lasso, we're struggling with our deliverables. And it replies like, howdy, everyone. Just brighty day for everyone. It's like, you will crush it. And so we actually created this chatbot way before we actually pivoted to chatbots, and it has been super, super useful. Obviously since now we have more chatbots, Pedro is using Hal9 to do image generation, as he mentioned. You can go to Hal9, and if you don't want to read what Hal9 is about, you can go directly to Hal9 and ask like, hey, what is Hal9? How much does it cost? Does it support X or Y? So we use it for that. We're starting to use it for marketing and, content generation and the like. So even ourselves as a startup that we are, we definitely use chatbots a lot. We use in general just as a coworker, right? To be honest, I still use a lot ChatGPT. I think Pedro as well. I think there's something about ChatGPT being so generic that it's just useful to have it in another tab. Definitely, I think chatbots, at least talking about myself, Pedro, let us know what you think, but they have made me so much more productive, and it's hard to quantify. Sometimes I make the joke, like, I don't know if ChatGPT and chatbots and Hal9 is making me 3% more productive or 30%, but I use it a lot for many things in my professional life and also in my personal life. It really has become a coworker to help me code faster, help me understand topics of running a company that I'm not aware of. But yeah, I don't know, Pedro, what am I missing to share here?
I mean, just the use cases that I have on my end. Javier already mentioned image generation and marketing, etc. But I would like to share also, I think I mentioned on the other episode, Sergio, that I went through a really long immigration process. First, I got the work visa, and then I'm obtaining my permanent residence. And obviously, that's a black hole of terminology and processes and forms. And it's really hard for an outsider from immigration law to understand everything about it. And also legal fees are super expensive. So sometimes I've been using LLMs to kind of navigate that process and just figure out like, oh, is this form for this and what is this term means, etc. And I'm also using it for code generation in languages that I'm not good at. I mentioned on the other episode that my background is in robotics and I usually code in C++. And we're doing a lot of projects with the chatbots, and some of the projects involve building websites. I'm not an expert on JavaScript or HTML or CSS, and it's been super helpful to use the LLMs. I know the logic and I can read the code, but I'm not familiar with all the libraries and all the quirks of other languages. So yeah, code generation for someone that knows how to code, but not in that particular language, I think it's super useful. And I think in general, if you take a step back, I think empowering people to learn quickly, because also in the process, I've been learning how to code in those languages. And I've learned a lot, obviously, about immigration law. I'm super optimistic about not just looking at these chatbots as a tool that helps you achieve something, but it's also teaching you to learn some skills faster than actually sitting down and learning immigration law or going through a course of HTML or web development. I think it enables you to learn through building. And to me, that's super exciting because, I come from this background of the maker movement and all that. I think net, it's a tool that not only gets you faster to where you want to go, but actually teaches you. And the next time you have a similar problem, you will actually go faster, because if you were going to do like 5 questions to the LLM, maybe you'll do 2 really good questions that will solve your problem.
And I think that's also in the sense of the world is evolving in a direction where everyone will have some sort of a co-pilot, co-worker, both professionally and personally for different topics. Because I think there's so much information out there, so much complexity. And I think we're living in a super exciting point of time where we have access to these technology to basically gain access to that expertise without necessarily requiring from a human expert, or probably there's still room for human experts, but for more complex situations, for more difficult tasks. But I think that's fascinating. What I also would love to learn is in terms of your priorities. So what are some of the big things that are coming in the following months for Hal9? What are some of the big projects in which you're currently working?
I can speak a little bit about that. And we didn't mention it when we talk about team, but our team is very technical, including myself. I'm a software engineer. Pedro is an electric mechanical engineer. And now we both have background in entrepreneurship. Mostly everyone in our team is very, very technical. And that's why our platform is where it's at today. But on the medium short term, we're actually going to focus a lot on being outward focused. So just showing people what they can do with the platform, having more examples, being a little bit more proactive in connecting with the community is something that I believe we should have done more of, but we were just heads down building a great product, a great platform. So that's one of the things that are short term. We honestly cannot plan more than 3 to 6 months in advance just because everything changes so fast. But at least on the short term, we're planning to just build community, share, build more examples, build very, very cool demos of the types of things that you can build with Hal9. And hopefully you'll also see us in LinkedIn and Twitter, just sharing. You should see us over the next few months sharing more applications and the like. I don't know, Pedro, if there's something top of mind for you.
It's implied in what you said, but you didn't say it like with these words of getting more customers. Currently, we are super focused on getting customers. It sounds obvious for a startup, but often we focus, in general, entrepreneurs focus on fundraising or building culture and other stuff that are important, but they are not as important as getting customers. And we are actively putting ourselves in that mindset of, okay, how does this get us more customers? And what Javier is describing, like doing documentation and content and all that, the final goal is to get more people using the product and giving us feedback. And I think right now, and you were talking about custom chatbots, I think right now we're trying to get to those customers to understand what it actually means to build a custom chatbot, because that's a whole world. Like we're learning that sometimes there's knowledge in the brains of employees inside the organization that is not documented. So even if you had a perfect LLM, like imagine GPT-10 or whatever, even AGI, there's a lot of knowledge that it's only in a brain of a person, and you have to talk to that person to figure out where this answer is or what does this term means. Like you have to be on a meeting to understand that this term means this KPI and it uses this formula, but it's not documented anywhere. So I think building custom chatbots actually means what our platform enables, a custom technology, but also figuring out what those terms and that knowledge actually mean.
100%. Thanks for connecting that, Pedro. We're doing the marketing because the platform is ready to scale to more customers. And we believe that it's a better, we're engineers, so we want to show what the platform is capable of doing rather than sending marketing brochures that, trust me, this will create synergies and optimize your business, right? So at the end, as Pedro was saying, is scaling and getting more customers. And we think that we can do best by showcasing how to build these types of custom coworkers that are super powerful. Yeah.
So you're basically transitioning from being in the garage, working day and night and building the product now to really scaling that, making it known to the world. And yeah, customer acquisition, I think, of course, is the bloodline of every company. So that will be a fascinating transition, especially now. I was looking today at also what has happened in terms of VC funding in the AI space, that it has been so much overhyped, and how critical it is to really focus on gaining customers, building like a sustainable business. So it's an incredible way of focusing your efforts in the following months. Guys, we're unfortunately reaching the end of our conversation. I think there's a lot to talk about, but what I would love to wrap up our conversation, just learning from each of you guys, what will be your best advice for aspiring founders? Pedro, you already shared some golden nuggets in our previous conversation, but I would love, once again, Pedro, if you can share with us from your side, and also Javier from your side, as you guys have been building Hal9.
I honestly would say that you definitely want to be optimistic when you go and all in to create a startup, right, or start something. I also would say that you need to be very pessimistic. When you're planning, right, is hope for the best, plan for the worst situation. When I started working on this in 2021, I told my wife, it's like, well, I need 1 year just to figure this out. And after 1 year, we'll be self-sufficient. And oh man, was I wrong about that, right? At the end it worked out, but I think you want to definitely go for it and give it your best shot. I do think that you need to work full time on it and give it your best, but I think it also helps to be very pessimistic, right? And without influencing you and think like, okay, what are the things that could go wrong? How do I make sure that I have be able to succeed even if things go really, really bad? It's the happiest that I've been all my life. So if someone is interested in either starting their startup or work at a startup, I would highly recommend it. But Pedro, you probably have interesting feedback as well.
I already mentioned a couple of ideas on the other episode, but right now, since we're talking about that question about the chatbots that we use, I think something that sometimes we missed is some people on the internet call it like eating the dog food. I think that's the expression of, you have to use your own product, not only using your own product, but be happy with why are you using that product, no? And the examples that we mentioned, I think, are good examples of things that we use. And it's not like we are trying to trick ourselves like the product is good. And it's something that solves a problem for us. So when you talk to a customer, you have a really good sense of where the technology is. Right now, one of the biggest problems with AI at this moment in time is that it's super easy to make a flashy demo, like a hack demo that is super impressive, but it's works like 1 out of 100 times. And we see that even with super big companies that sometimes do demos in public and sometimes they break. But if you get it right, it would be impressive, but it won't work on a robust way with any customer or any use case. So I think you have to be super aware of that. And the only way to keep you honest is actually using it and eating the dog food. And sometimes it's painful because sometimes we have that struggle that also this technology sometimes is not very reliable because it's not deterministic, literally throwing the dices. And sometimes it doesn't work. It's like that. And you have to use things like Hal9 to build around it and make it more robust. But if you don't go through that process, it's super easy to overpromise and sell things that actually don't have a lot of value. So eat the dog food.
That sounds like the advice that I've heard, Pedro, which is really good. Make sure that you build something that you love and that solves a problem for you first, right? Because at least you know that it's helping someone, which is you, and then you can scale to more people and the like. I'm not sure if that applies to all products, but at least I think for us, and if you're going to be working on something for a long time, I think what you say makes a lot of sense.
That's actually the origin of many companies, no? You're facing an own problem, and that's what ultimately leads to a product that then you start sharing with others that are facing the same problem. So it's fascinating advice for everyone out there. So guys, thank you very much for this fantastic conversation. I greatly appreciate, Javier and Pedro, your time. And of course, we will be looking forward to what the next months have in store for you guys. And thank you very much again for being here.
Thank you, Sergio.
Yeah, thank you, Sergio. And thank you for everyone listening to this.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye. And thanks to you for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe via your favorite podcast app to be notified about new episodes and share with us your feedback. We would love to hear from you. Thank you also to the Maxpreneurs team, Valeria Morel, Hector Barragan from Hyper Voltage, Francisco Jaimes, Pamela Elizalde, Katia Cruz, Rocío Marroquín. I am Sergio Chavez. See you next time.